Remember the basics we discussed about the placement stage in our video The 3 Phases of Choker? Now it's time to delve deeper into the topic and give you tips on which squares are ideal for each piece. But first goes first, the order matters. Until the last piece is placed on the board, Choker is a game of incomplete information. What cards does my opponent have? And in what order shall I play my pieces to get the most out of them? My advice is that you start with the less valuable pieces, the pawns and minor pieces. If you have a pawn, a good starting move as white would be to place it on f3 or d3. The initial position starts with an e2 pawn, which is isolated and therefore weak. If you have the possibility, connect it with a pawn or two, and that will strengthen your king position too. In our example, the f3 pawn closes the f-file, an open file through which the king could have been attacked, and it also creates an escape square for the king on f2 in case it needs to flee from a queenside attack. If black also has a pawn, a starting move to consider would be to either copy white's placement or use the same idea but on a different file. By placing the pawn on d6, now both the d and f files are closed, making the kings more sheltered from immediate attacks. Next comes the eternal battle, knights or bishops. The knight is my favorite piece in traditional chess, but in Choker, I prefer the bishops. Why? Because the knight is a short-range piece. Just think about how many moves it will take for it to even give a check to the king on e8. While a bishop, if placed wisely, can almost immediately attack the opponent's king. Furthermore, since there are only 7 pieces for each player, the position, the battlefield, is wide open, and that favors the bishops. For these reasons, it is easier to use the knights as a defensive piece in Choker, but on that role they can be brilliant, protecting important squares on both flanks. Plus, let's not underestimate how tricky of a piece the knights are. Watch out for tactical motives, especially in the heat of the time trouble. For the open nature of any Choker starting position, the rooks and queens can be extremely powerful for immediate attacks. Place them on open files and your opponent will have to be defending from the very beginning of the chess game. If you have a second rook or queen to support your heavy piece, think of doubling them in the placement phase. To make the most out of your pieces as black, you can use all the previously mentioned tips, but add a hint of caution to them. Remember that since white goes first, your pieces can be immediately captured, or, even worse, a mating attack can be launched against your king. The first move advantage in Choker is way more significant than in traditional chess. Whether playing with white or black, if I have a queen, I do like to keep it as my final piece to place on the board. It creates an additional tension for my opponent and leaves them in uncertainty whether I have one or not. And it will change the evaluation of the position completely if a surprise queen or surprise queens appear on the board. As a general rule of thumb, focus on piece coordination already in the placement phase. In traditional chess, you need to develop your pieces first so that they can work together in the attack or defense. But in Choker, you do have the advantage that you can choose starting squares that achieve that right from the beginning. Aim for setups that are harmonious and let your pieces work as a unit. Plus, always keep in mind the safety of your king. How do you feel about the order in the placement phase, and what are some of your favorite squares for your pieces? Practice in the Choker app or here on the browser to develop your own setups and strategies. Who knows, maybe one day a Choker opening will be named after you.